I am your host, Hunter Gaylor, and I am so excited today. I'm going to be bringing in a special guest here to talk about PetVivo, which is a company we've been following a lot. But before I bring that guest in, I just want to encourage everyone to like, follow, and subscribe our channel. We are growing rapidly. We are on numerous platforms. And if you miss us here, pick us up on the go on Spotify, iHeartRadio. We're on the Anchor podcast. So a lot of things going on. We're going to be expanding our network. We're also streaming on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and now Instagram. And we are going to be coming to Roku, so we've got some good announcements coming on that. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in Dr. Michael Stearns, who is a director. He was a Dr. Michael Stearns is a PetVivo's on the advisory board. He's a strategic advisor for them. And, Dr. Stearns, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Oh, thank you, Hunter. Thank you for having me. It's a great product and love to talk about it.
Great. Well, I've had a lot of conversations with, several vets, people that have been involved with the PetVivo product, really kind of from inception. We've had a lot of conversations with, obviously the leadership and a lot of stuff they're doing with distribution. But, really for today, and which I think is very important for our audience, is getting the veterinarian's opinion on this, right? I think a lot of people don't really know how to talk to their doctors, right? And I think it's the same thing. A lot of people don't know how to talk to their vets, right? And how do we know about a new product? And so let's just start from the beginning. Let's give a little bit about your medical history, specifically, your veterinarian background. What led you to PetVivo, and why the spring product in particular?
Sure. I think that initially it's a little bit more random. Someone on the board of PetVivo had contacted me in the management development team probably back, and I've been trying to think back, maybe 2016, and said, we have this new product, described what it did. And I started out my career as an equine veterinarian, so I did horses. And so I was very familiar with joint injections and things that would, help performance type animals. And at the time they contacted me, I'd already switched over to a full-time small animal type practice. In fact, I'm a mobile veterinarian, so a lot of the same kind of practices that I was doing in horses. And I thought, wow, if I could take this into the canine space and help a lot of older dogs, because dogs are living longer these days just because of husbandry in general, vaccines, better food, lack of exposure to traffic in general, I think. And I thought, wow, this would be cool. If you can do this, there's nothing like this that you can really put in the joint and affect mobility. And I thought immediately of older dogs, being an older human athlete myself and doing triathlons and so forth. I thought, well, I would do this if it was available. Everything you had to date got absorbed rapidly and really didn't have a residual effect. So I thought, okay, this is exciting. Send me some of this stuff and we'll try it. And at the time, and I'll stop in a second, it was pretty early on, and they didn't give me any sort of preconceived ideas about the patient population. So I came up with sort of my own group of dogs, and maybe we can talk about that later, but and started using it. I was just astounded by the results right from day one.
Well, I think that's very important because, I'm a long distance runner, and, joints are always of issue, right? I think with any type of athlete, especially
Right.
as, we age. And it's the same thing in active pets, whether it's, cats or dogs, or as you said, in kind of the competitive equine space. And I really want to talk about that because when we look at it from a marketing perspective, and this is the Markets Hunter show, so we do look at not just the technology and the product, but we also look at, the efficacy of the product as well, because that's what kind of drives market and market demand. As a veterinarian, the other products that we've talked about on the marketplace are of synthetic nature. It's not, the same product that Spring has, which, has had numerous testimonials out there in specifically in the equestrian space. Can you talk a little bit about that and the unique differentiating factors of why Spring versus any potential other product that exists, which, by the way, full disclaimer, we haven't found any?
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing right off the bat, and I did have, when I was in the human pharmaceutical industry for many years, after being a horse veterinarian for 5 years, we were always looking at sort of cross-linked polymers as being a delivery vehicle for drugs in general. And so I thought, well, okay, you don't really need the drug in there in the matrix, but the matrix itself, which is cushioning, if it would just stay in a joint and based on the circulation patterns and so forth too, intra-articular spaces, I thought this is wonderful. This could be a good thing. Now, things that stick around could also have potential downside, of course, because once they're in, you can't get them out. But the most common injury in dogs is the rupture of what we would call our anterior cruciate ligament, or our ACL. In dogs, we call it a CCL, just to be different, because a cranial cruciate ligament, just because of the four-legged anatomy. But knowing that there were, approximately 300,000 of these surgeries being done in the U.S. and probably many more cases that went either undiagnosed or untreated, I thought, okay, that's the first joint to start with. And it's also a very large joint in the dog and very easy to hit. Part of the problem with small animal veterinarians is they're not really taught in veterinary school, nor in practice when they come out. There's not a tradition of injecting things into joints. So I had kind of a unusual background, having switched over from the equine world, where it was very common to do joint injections, into the canine world, where it was not completely uncommon and people were almost scared to do it. And I guess, boldly go where no man has gone before. I had no issue injecting a joint, as long as you do things carefully, appropriate, with appropriate sterility and so forth. But I also, my main practice is house calls. So I also thought that this is something that, with good care and, ease of use, I could do in the field and help people at their homes. So that greatly expanded the market in my mind. So that's how I started picking my cases and just doing it.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, one small injection for man, right? One giant injection for, the canine space, right? So, but I think that's important. I want to go back to that number for just a second that you said, over 500,000. Can we just confirm that number for me?
Well, I think I used the number 300,000.
300,000.
I don't have a current number. I'm talking 4 or 5 years ago. There was some good some studies done that I had read, published studies that mentioned 230 to 250,000, and that was years ago. And those are just surgical cases in the canine world. It is the most common canine surgery that's done, I would believe, besides spays and neuters, sterilization procedures. But it was astounding. And the surgery is very expensive. In our part of California, it's gotten up to around $8,500 per knee. And with a low percentage of cases insured, we're maybe getting up to the 20-25% range of insured animals. That was a big step for people, especially, if you take a 13, 14, 15-year-old dog who's already at partial surgical risk and looking at a 10 to 12-week recovery time. I thought, wow, let's compare some of this, just do some dogs and see if we can help them. And the initial cases that I tried were astounding, just older rescue dogs that couldn't walk up and down stairs. You did the injection, and the next day they were running up and down the stairs.
Wow,
so
incredible!
Those were, it was truly amazing. And the duration of the effect in the first dog that I did was 2 years, until he died of natural causes. So that even gave me further hope that this could be a really useful therapy in these non-surgical cases. And that's just one segment of the market.
Well, and yeah, I mean, especially, and we're talking about, dogs and cats obviously here, but I mean, when you look at the entire equestrian market, not just on the performance animals, but even, the house animals, people that just have horses that they ride around on. I mean, that's still treated the same way. So I think from a market position, it's really, really incredible what PetVivo is doing. And I know we are waiting for some more studies to come out in the feline space, because we do see that cats react to pain a little bit differently than dogs. And so, it's a way of which we have to kind of monitor to see what's going on. So I think that's very, very important. One of the other aspects, Dr. Stearns, that I want to talk a little bit about was the way that PetVivo is working with some of, as a support, if you will, to Amerisourcebergen's, okay, MWI, as a large national retail, kind of sales force. How involved are you or the PetVivo veterinarians, the more veterinarians are on site, in training other vets that may not know about or be trained to do the types of injections? Are you seeing an adoptability here? Are you seeing, veterinarians becoming more comfortable with this and saying, oh, okay, this is great, this is something I want to be able to offer? Can you just walk us through that educational process?
Sure. I've actually done it with probably, 4 or 5 other veterinarians, and it's the old, do one, each one, and whatever. But,
right.
It's very simple to do. And once these veterinarians actually see how easy it is to inject the joint, and that is the bugaboo in small animal medicine, it's just the actual idea of an intra-articular injection. And once you get beyond that, Now you've got other joints available, and I've recently, or not so recently, but in the last year, expanded my repertoire to some of the smaller canine joints, like the elbow, the hip, and shoulder, and had excellent results in that as well. There are some subtleties to those other joints because sometimes you'll see those in a greater disease state or a more advanced disease state than you do in the knees. If a dog pops its cranial cruciate ligament or its ACL like a person, there's immediate instability. The interesting thing is that most of these dogs that do this don't necessarily have other accompanying issues that cause severe pain. So it's a very mechanical type of thing. In people, you have pain with an ACL rupture because people often tear their meniscus. I don't. There may be surgeons out there that disagree with it. I think dogs, from what I've seen and spoken to veterinary surgeons, is that dogs rarely tear their meniscus, and that's the painful thing. So if we can help the mechanics of the joint, we're 90% of the way there. And other veterinarians, once they see it, it's like their eyes kind of light up. They go, "Oh my God, I didn't know you could do this." And so I think, the hurdle is greater in smaller animal veterinarians just from a mechanical standpoint once they see the activity. Now, as far as the MWI connection, I have made myself available to our local regional representatives that, hey, if anyone calls about this, have it direct them to me. I'll walk them through it by video. I'll talk through it. So I'm guessing over the last few years as a PetVivo advisory board member, I've probably talked to at least 15 or 20 other veterinarians, some of whom have also given me feedback because there are veterinarians who've done more hip joints than I have, for example. And I started doing those recently, and there's a female veterinarian in Southern California who does as many hips as I do knees. So, there is, once this gets out there and the information gets exchanged about how easy the actual procedure is, and then how astounding some of the results are. And I think, you start being able to, in your own mind, stratify your cases. And I think that's the way it has to be. It just has to be this sort of viral knowledge transfer in some way, shape, or form.
Well, no, I think that's been incredible information, Dr. Stern, so I really appreciate that. I think one of the big things that we want to cover, just kind of in closing, is it's all about education and, creating an awareness for, the marketplace. And when we can bring people like you on and we can really kind of, understand where you're coming from and understand the medical efficiencies and effectiveness of the Spring product, I think that speaks volumes and testaments to any type of investor that's looking at PetVivo, or even, animal owners as well. That gives them a level of comfort, especially when something is, coming new to the market. So Dr. Stearns, thank you so much. Dr. Stearns is on the PetVivo advisory board. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Markets Hunter program. And I look forward to having you on the program again.
Absolutely. Thank you. As I get more experience with the smaller joints and do more hips, I think that's the next frontier is there's so many hip issues out there that I think in older dogs that we can really try to affect changes in that direction. And I would just like to thank you also for having me on the program, and just let you know as an aside that I think my dog gets nervous every time I pull out a needle. He thinks he's going to be the next injection. So
oh, well, we saw your dog running around, in the car. So that's very cute. And
yeah,
that's funny.
He's gone about as far away from me as he can right now. He knows the words. I think he knows the word spring, and he's become averse to that. But anyway, if he needs it someday in his lifetime, I would certainly have no qualms at all about doing him immediately.
Well, there you go. That's a testament in and of itself. So, Dr. Stearns, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Have a great day, and thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That was Dr. Stearns. He's on the Dr. Michael Stearns from the PetVivo Advisory Board. Just another example of having the conversations that matter with the people that matter, especially getting in and getting the real facts from the people in industry, I think is an incredible step. And it's really important for the journalistic integrity and the reporting that needs to go on with these companies, because we really want to do the deep dive. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as someone that's involved in the public markets, it's conversations like these that give us greater insight, into these companies on what they're doing, how they're doing it, and, where they're going to be going in the future. So we appreciate people like Dr. Stearns joining the program. As always, I am your host, Hunter Gaylor. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe across all of our channels. A lot of exciting things to come as we go into the summer months. Make sure you listen to us on Spotify, iHeartRadio as well. And like and drop a comment, if you will. It's always great to have the support, and we'll bring you on some Twitter Spaces as well. A lot of exciting things going on as industry keeps moving right along as we're tackling the capital markets one day at a time. But as always, thank you for joining. I'm your host, Hunter Gaylor, and this was another episode of Markets Hunter.